G'day, friends. All right, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Welcome to Lead Empowered TV. My guest today is Keith Mercer, education consultant, professional speaker, former Division I football champion, and author of the Student Success Formula. He's a guy who really understands adversity firsthand. Growing up in Washington, D.C., he made a decision early on that challenges would not define him, they would develop him. And that mindset has carried him all the way to competing at the highest collegiate level. But what I love about Keith isn't just the championship pedigree he has, it's what he has chosen to do with it. He's the founder of the Mercer Elite Leadership Program, where he's equipping students, professionals, and executives with the tools to master their mindset, raise their standards, and lead with purpose. His message: we weren't born to be average. It's not hype. It's a challenge. It's a call to step up when pressure hits and a refusal not to coast. So Keith works at the intersection of education and business, helping people build confidence, strengthen culture, and actually sustain growth, not just talk about it. If you've ever wrestled with playing small, settling, or wondering how to lead at a higher level when the stakes are real, this conversation is for you. So let's dive in with Keith Mercer today. All right, Keith, how are you doing, my friend? There you are.
How you doing? How you doing, Nathan? First and foremost, thank you for having me on your show. I'm a big fan of yours. I love how you connect real people to the real world.
I appreciate that, man. And it's because of people like you at the end of the day, here sharing your heart, leading from a place of service to your fellow man. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So I'm so excited to get into this conversation about, especially, having a winning mindset, because life has a tendency to beat us down, right? And there's a lot of challenges always in the world, and a lot of things that all of us are working through. Everybody is dealing with something. And I know that what you're going to share with my audience today is going to resonate with them and empower them and help them overcome whatever they are struggling with in their life. So, Keith, you've competed at the highest collegiate level. What does a winning mindset actually mean to you beyond sports, and how does that mentality translate into the classrooms with the students that you work with, the boardroom, or just everyday leadership in general?
Well, thank you for asking. That's a great question. Well, to me, the mindset, having a winning mindset, has three phases. The first phase is identity, being honest with yourself. Where are you at? Who are you? Where are you at? And then where you want to go. The second one is your standards. What standards do you set for yourself? Once you identify who you are and where you want to go, then there's a standard that needs to be set. And that third phase is discipline. Can you maintain that standard without the distractions? Being able to stay focused and to keep raising that bar high. And that translates to every aspect of life. Because like you said, life is going life, right?
Yep.
Life is going life, but we got to develop and continue to have that winning mindset.
Out of those three, I think one that's probably most challenging for people is to have the discipline, right?
Yes.
I mean, we see it every year in the gym. I go to Crunch Fitness, and I mean, it's packed, right? Every December and January, people are excited to get in the gym and get pumped up and whatnot, and that seems to quickly fade by middle of February. So what are some best practices that somebody can do that sets them up for success regarding discipline for the long term, not just for the short term? Short term is easy, long term is hard.
Well, I use my 4Bs of success. The first one is belief. You have to believe that you're built for more. You have to believe that you can accomplish the goals that you set for yourself. That second B is begin. You have to be disciplined enough to begin actions. To start. And that's really the hardest part for people, is just to start. You have to start with the action. And my third one is beyond. You have to be able to continue to raise the bar. And then my fourth B is balance. Being able to stay balanced while you're pushing forward is very important. Those are just simple steps that you can use every day to help move you forward.
Yeah, I love the one about beginning. my family, we're pretty good about going to the gym, just to continue to use that analogy. I mean, I'm in the gym usually 5 days a week, but I share with people all the time that the hardest decision for me is to get in the car to leave the house to go do it.
Yes.
That is beginning for me, right?
Yes.
Once I get there and I'm there at the end of the day, it's easy, but it's just making that decision to get out of the house and get into the car and go do it. And I think that's what so many
Yes.
people struggle with regarding of what type of progress they're looking to make in their life. Keith, you often say that we weren't born to be average. What causes people to settle for that, and how would you help them break that pattern? Is it fear that they're trying to overcome? Is it sometimes the environment, perhaps, that whole nature nurture piece? Or is it just, lack of clarity and purpose, or something else? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that we see now that the data shows is comparison, comparison culture. You know, when you run a business, you assume that because this person's business is here, then my business should be there. But a lot of that is that culture that that business has set, as opposed to the culture that you're setting with your business. The second one is the fear of failure, right? A lot of people fear failing. And then you get the opposite side, fear of success. A lot of people fear success because with success comes standards. So that drives a lot of people. And then another big one is the fear of being uncomfortable. And what people got to understand that in order for you to grow, you're going to have to be uncomfortable because it's something new. Growth is new to you. So therefore, you have to be comfortable when you're uncomfortable.
The social comparison piece is so real, right? I mean, especially in today's society where, we have all these connections on Facebook and LinkedIn or whatever social media platform that you're on, but it's all around us.
Yes.
And we think that these people's lives or businesses are ideal, but
Yeah.
really, I mean, everybody's sharing their highlight reel.
Absolutely.
They're not sharing the challenges that they're facing. And that's one of the things that I've really struggled with in my life. I've gotten a lot better in the last couple of years, but just the whole idea of comparing where I'm at in my life, and I'm nearing 50. I'll be 50, this summer in July. So, that brings its own set of challenges, right? You wonder, well, maybe I should have been further along,
Yes.
by this stage than I thought I would be. But, 2 years ago, I made the decision to get off of Facebook. And one of the reasons was the whole social comparison
Yeah.
piece. It just wasn't healthy for me. And, there's a lot of trolls on Facebook, and I don't care whether Facebook is for you or not. I'm not here
Yeah.
to diss Facebook at the end of the day. I'm just saying that it wasn't for me. It wasn't healthy for me. And having been removed from it for almost a couple of years, it's actually one of the best decisions I've made. And now I choose to live on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn just seems to be a different dynamic on
Absolutely.
LinkedIn than Facebook. So yeah. So you talked about the whole fear of success piece. How did that work for you or against you? When you were a Division I athlete playing for Nebraska, and I think you won a couple of championships. I mean, how did you overcome that in such a high pace where the expectations are just so high?
I think for me, it started growing up in Washington, D.C., where I faced so much adversity early on. So I learned to identify what I wanted and then identify what I didn't want to be. I chose not to be the guy on the corner. I chose not to be the jump out kid. I wanted something different. So I started setting standards at that level. I knew what I wasn't going to do. So I was prepared for what most people call pressure. You have some people that run away from it. I run towards it because I realize that adversity is the resistance that we need to grow. So I was able to channel, okay, why am I going through this? How is this going to help me at some point? So what I did was I just channeled that emotion and then used it as for something positive. And when I got to Nebraska, it was so nice because again, our coaches set a standard. I mean, they identified what they wanted, what we needed to do to win a championship, and there was a certain standard that was set. So then I had already had the discipline because at the end of the day, Listen, I am the backup plan. I didn't have a home to go back to. So I had to make it happen. And it's in those moments of adversity that reveal who you really are and who you think you are. So that's what really helped me just to stay and keep pace and to keep motivated.
Yeah, and that's great because that actually brings up my next question. It was I wanted to talk about adversity. So when adversity hits, whether it's failure, criticism for somebody else, maybe it's a setback or a job layoff, we're seeing a lot of that in the marketplace right now. What separates those who grow from the adversity versus those who shrink into it? What's that internal shift that has to happen for them to, I'll say, navigate that in a healthy way?
Well, it just goes back to, again, my four B's. It goes back to believing in yourself, but also being honest with yourself. Where am I in this moment? And then where do I need to go? Being able to put your emotions to the side and be able to focus on what your goals are. And that was, for me, it was, how can I move forward? I'm winning. Remember, winning isn't a scoreboard. Winning is a standard. So I was already a winner before we won because of the things that, like you said earlier, the things that you don't see. In athletics, what we see the lights when they come on Saturday. Well, the game was already won by the standard that you set Monday through Friday. So then when the game time came, it was just live. I had already went over it in my mind 1,000 times. I was already prepared because I faced so much adversity, then I knew how to handle it. But it was that belief in myself, that belief in leadership, the standard that the coaches set for us.
Yeah, so I love what you just said, that winning is a standard, it's not a scoreboard. And I think a lot of us, especially, business-minded people, we look at things like key performance indicators all the
Yes,
time, right, as a measure of success. And I think a lot of times in just United States culture, we define ourselves by what we do.
absolutely.
You go to a networking event, somebody says, "What do you do?" You know that they're asking you, "What do you do for a living?" And that's
Yes,
just so much ingrained in who we are. And I think it's problematic when we tie our self-worth to what we do, because that we all know that can be temporary, right? At the end of the
absolutely.
day, I mean, you can have a job today and lose it tomorrow,
Absolutely.
um, versus tying up our identity in something that's more meaningful and important versus what a scoreboard says or
Yes.
what a KPI says. And, I think that at the end of the day, whether you lost or won a game during your time at Nebraska, I know you won a couple of national championships, but you of course didn't win all the time, right? Uh, but at the end of the day, you still felt like a winner, even when the scoreboard didn't go your way, I'm assuming.
Absolutely, absolutely. Winning doesn't make you a champion. Being a champion helps you win. So a lot of it is, again, preparation, the standards that you set for yourself, believing in yourself, taking action, moving forward, and just repeating that process. Once you set a standard, then it's just repeating, 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 repeating. And that's just like life. Life is going life, like I said. And that's the one thing I love about how athletics transfers so much into life, because you get out of life what you put into it. I mean, it's just that simple. The standard that you set for yourself will decide on if you're successful or not. Because revenue doesn't build culture, culture builds revenue, right? The standard that you set at work is what will help you with the results. Standard comes before results.
Well, Keith, we've got about 10 minutes left in our conversation today, and there's a couple of more questions that I want to get to.
Yes, sir.
We have a lot of business owners, a lot of leaders that listen to this show. So for leaders listening right now, how do you build a winning mindset into a team culture? And you just touched on that just a little bit, but I want to go deeper into that, and not just inside one motivated individual, right? So what are the
Yes.
practical habits or standards that create that environment inside of organizations where that winning mindset ultimately transforms the culture at the end of the day?
Yes. Well, again, it starts with identity. identifying what you want to accomplish. One of the things that the coaches did at Nebraska, how they did it was they made it actionable. Everywhere we went in the football facilities, there were always positive words. Positive words reinforced, reinforced, reinforced. And remember, the standard starts from the leaders. The standards start from the top, but making sure that everyone understands their role and everyone knows that their role is important on a team. Keeping people engaged, and talking to everyone, making sure that line of communication is there. Everything that was laid out for us was repeated in the meeting rooms, on the field. So there was no question about the communication. The communication was there. And also giving people tasks that they can do, right? And then reinforcing good job on your start. We tend to want to reward people at the beginning, at the end with the results. Well, the data shows that it's important to acknowledge the start as well. Good start of the game, good start of the day. Those things will ultimately build your culture even better than you even thought it could be.
Yeah, and I even do that here in my home office. I mean, you were talking about the words and the values that were plastered
Yes.
like all over the locker rooms and that kind of stuff. And I'm kind of just shooting myself into a corner here, but I've got my organization's values over here. I've got, leadership quotes that I've, printed onto posters on Canva and have had printed. I've got Bible verses that speak to me. And
Yes.
I'm just surrounding myself by positive energy, at the end of the day. And I
Absolutely.
think it kind of goes back to what I talked about earlier with social media. You put garbage in, you get garbage out, right? So the
Absolutely.
more that I avoid things like watching the news and replacing that with positive energy,
Absolutely.
the easier it is to show up as the best version of myself every day.
Absolutely. Just small discipline actions every day because we all get stuck, right? We all
Sure.
go through that. So just little things that you can do daily, just one thing. Because at the end of the day, you're the director of your movie. You get to decide how you show up every day. By believing in yourself, you show up with confidence. Right? And by beginning, you show up with your actions. Actions are everything, especially as a leader. As a leader, your standard is your actions, and your team will follow that. You want to create better cultures? Be better yourself and create better leaders, more leaders. And then again, beyond. Show your team that you're willing to go beyond. If the coach is willing to go beyond, if the CEO is willing to go beyond, the team will go beyond. The team will always rise to the standard that's set. And to build cultures, you have to build a standard. And then that last B is balance. Being able to stay balanced. And for you, it was that discipline. And I love how you're able to cut out Facebook. You see what the distractions are, you identified it, and then it takes discipline to be able to move forward to having a growth mindset. And that's why the culture that you have is so good.
Well, Keith, you talked about being stuck, and we'll finish up with this question today. If someone
Yes.
feels stuck or discouraged, what's the first step toward building or rebuilding confidence and momentum? What can they do immediately to start thinking, performing, and behaving differently?
I'll give you three things really quick. The first thing is be truthful. Be truthful to yourself. Where are you in this moment? The second thing is just begin. Take one actionable step that you can do today, right now, to improve whatever you want to improve. And then the third one is listen, you have to change your internal language. What are you saying to yourself? Right? What are you saying to yourself? Are you saying positive things to yourself? And then are you keeping the promises that you made to yourself? And I'll give you an example. Every morning I wake up, I tell myself, today is going to be the best day, the best day moving forward. Well, am I keeping my promises throughout the day? So certain parts of the day, Okay, I have to go, I have to check myself and be like, okay, am I telling myself the truth? What's one thing I can do to kind of get me out of being stuck, that can move me forward, that can help me then get closer to the goals that I set for that day?
Well, Keith, I've really appreciated this conversation, and one of the things that's really stuck with me is just reminding me that, winning isn't, it's a mindset, right? It's
Absolutely.
not about, and you mentioned that it's a standard. It's not
Yes,
about the scoreboard. It's not about winning the trophies. It's about how we respond when things don't go our way, and how we
absolutely.
carry ourselves when no one's watching, right? That whole
Absolutely.
integrity piece. So, average is always avoidable. I've learned that
Absolutely.
just in the meetings that I've had with you. And man, I just love the life that you speak into me and to
Absolutely.
others, because drifting is easy, right? But
Absolutely.
development is hard and it requires us to be intentional. So
Yeah.
before we dismiss this show today, I want to give you an opportunity to just share where can people learn more about you. I did share a QR code earlier where they can just scan that and connect with you on LinkedIn. So I've made that as easy as possible.
Yes, you can go to my website at mercerelite.com. On my website is a little bit about me. You have different windows, different phases of things that I'm doing. My email's on there, my phone number's on there. You can reach out to me. You can follow me on my social medias. Everything is Mercer Elite. So yeah, please reach out, or you can go get my book, The Student Success Formula, which lays out a lot of cultural things, a lot of leadership things that you can do every day to help improve you, help you believe in yourself a little more, help you believe in yourself to have more confidence, and just believe in yourself, because at the end of the day, we weren't born to be average. We were born to be great. You have greatness inside of you that's waiting to come out. You have greatness inside of you. And I truly believe that our purpose in the world is simple. You have a talent, a gift that the world needs in order for the world to be a better place. Bring out that talent, bring out that gift, so the world can be the world that we want it to be, that we know it can be, where we can love each other and we can all celebrate each other.
All right, Keith. So here's the real question for all of us, right? Where have we been tolerating average, right? Maybe it's in our leadership, our discipline, our expectations of ourselves or others, our own effort. And a winning mindset isn't reserved for athletes like yourself. It's really for anyone who
Absolutely.
refuses to settle or coast. So, Keith,
Absolutely.
thank you for bringing the challenge and the clarity that you brought to this show today. And to everyone watching, raise your standard this week. We'll see you next time on Lead Empowered TV. Take care.